Brilliant, P. Again, thank you for sharing those people, because I think we started this conversation this evening. Both Linford and P started naming the people that they were going to talk about. I hadn't heard of, I'm going to not lie here, I didn't hear about any of them until tonight. So this is why Black History Month's important. It shouldn't just be 1 month out of a year, but at least we get the ability to force these people to come to the front of the conversation rather than being mixed in with everyone else. So I can see a few questions in the chat for P. I think, Corinne, you were first out of the blocks there. You said you wanted to mention something about museums. And I also had some stuff from Carl as well. So do you want to come in and ask your question, Corinne?
It wasn't so much a question. That was great, P. Brilliant. Really like that kind of stuff. And I mean, I'd just say that it's like one of those things where I remember when I was young, and you know, when you used to have, I don't know, spare pages in your exercise book. I used to do little projects on stuff like that, you know, and just put it together. The thing I wanted to say about the museums and archives is that every single museum in this country has got stuff from all over the world. Most of it is in their archives and they don't even put it out. I reached out to, I found someone who's Black who works in the museums in Sheffield, and I reached out to her and I've asked her if like we can have access to what's in archives. And I know that one exhibition which is on at the moment is from Black artists, including Keith Piper, and they've got his stuff out. But what she's going to do for me is take out some of the other stuff. And she said that I can bring a group of people up to look at it. You know, and it'll be like, you know, not part of the public thing, but I think it's really nice if we get to see it first and give them some feedback on it. But I'm determined to get into museums and get them to tell us what the hell is in their archives and why is it there, why is it down there, and sometimes because they sell stuff off. I mean, I feel they ought to give it us, to be honest, because they've got no business holding on to it at all. Anyway, it's my rant over.
No, that rant's really good. But one thing I would say to you, don't rely on them to give you the stuff from the archives.
No.
You have to also look remember what Linford said, read it.
Yes.
I'll give you an example why. Bedford have this lovely document and it said how, and the one thing they were very proud of was that this servant or slave, right? She was a slave, she wasn't a servant because servants were paid, was left some money. She was bequeathed some money by the person who she worked for. And I thought, wow, that's quite interesting. So that was one of the things when I went to the archive. By the way, I was questioned why I wanted to go in there. People walking past me, going in, and it's hello, Bob, hello, Sheila, you know, and people who have not been there before sign their names in. And I was stopped and asked if I was going there. And I said, well, doing the same as them. And they said, well, you know, this is archives. And I said, uh-huh. And I said, I see in this book that you've given, this person was around in 1710. I want to look for it. And they were, oh, what for? And I said, I haven't seen you ask anybody. I said, I'm going to be very polite. I said, it's for educational purposes. In the end, she couldn't really say anything, so I went in. And I looked for that document. Anyway, it's very hard to read at first, because very, very the oldie writing. My dear, why I'm saying this, she was the thing that was bequeathed. She wasn't bequeathed no money. She was bequeathed to his sister. And if she then survived, she can then go free. To do what? So read the documents. There's one other document. They said, oh, this man, Josh Ginneman, owned a load of land and he'd bought it. What they didn't say was the deeds they gave him was because Josh could not read. And it was written in gobbledygook. We looked at it and I said, we then found that when he tried to get his land, some people come and took it and they said his deed was worth nothing. And it was kind of left out of their records. So that's why Linford says, read it. don't accept, read all the time. You know, the museum have a museum association, and I'd go on their website and I'd join the membership, join the free one for now. They do have conferences, but I think if more and more Black people contact them and say to them, look, we want to see more of our records. We want to see more of what you've got down there. Just like you're saying, Corinne, I think if more of us do that, they will have a space. At the moment, it's still very, 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 very white, even though England's history, talking 10,000 years ago, as we see with the Cheddar Man, is not very, very, very white.
Yeah.
But will be if we don't question.
Yeah. And they're crying out for people to be on their boards of trustees. They are literally falling over themselves to get us onto their boards of trustees.
And do it. But when you do it, be strategic. Because if you're the only one, you've still got to fight against people say, you know, basically we've got to try and change that narrative. And it's going to be very, very hard for people. It's like when they were saying about Shakespeare, and they're saying, well, Shakespeare couldn't have been white, had to have been Black, because look what he wrote about. Man never left the country. How did he know about the Moors? So you're going to be coming up against that. So whoever is in a committee, in the museums, etc., ensure that you know each other to talk about the difficulties you are having so you can support each other. It's really important, because other than that, you're just going to be left and isolated. Yeah. I'll give you an example, and this is just the other day. I was asked to do a talk, and I've got to go down there. And the lady rang me up quite upset saying, I don't know what to do, because the people who are holding it have now got a Bollywood dance troupe. You heard me right. I said, so what's that got to do with Black history? Well, they said it's because it's about BAME. And I said, it's not BAME History Month, it's Black History Month. But they are people of colour. So she doesn't know what to do. So we're going to deal with it this week. But it's still happening, folks. Still got kicked down some doors. I shouldn't laugh, but
I wouldn't be surprised if nobody in here was surprised to hear that was happening. P, you know, political Black. I know the union movement tried to do that same thing where they were publicizing things, and it was like, well, I mean, that's not a Black person. Why is it Black History Month with non-Black people? Because it's supposed to be about the anti-Black racism having a challenge, and if we're not challenging it the way we want to, then it gets watered down. Yeah. But there was a comment from Carl about what the Caribbean universities are doing. It might be a question that Linford might have an opinion on as well. But I'm no expert, but I think the work that his name's just gone out, Robin Walker and others have done courses to try and get a recognised qualification, but I don't know enough, so I'll let you two speak.
Well, there's quite a few people with courses, aren't there, Linford? I mean, even I've written a course.
They're one of the organisations that's doing quite a bit at the moment is sorry, I'm just trying to write a message at the same time to on your chat.
Okay. Okay.
One of the organisations that's doing quite a lot at the moment is they're called the Black Curriculum. And they're trying to get the basically decolonizing the school curriculum, because that's really what's needed. We need to decolonize the school curriculum, because it's strange just the amount. I talk to a lot of young people. I just had young people just here on Saturday. Every Saturday I have young people I'm talking to about the riots in 1981. I asked them the same question. What do you know about Black history? What are they teaching you in school about Black history? Nothing. Oh, no, sorry, they say. Oh, we learn about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. Yeah. And if we're lucky, we might hear a little bit about Mary Seacole.
Yeah.
And then the other thing they say is the majority, most of the time, it's about slavery.
Yeah.
That's it. So I say to them, are you aware there's such a thing as Black British history? They don't know anything about R.L. Moody. They know nothing about Queen Philippa. They don't know anything about Queen Charlotte. They don't know anything about the 1963 Bristol bus boycott. They know nothing about the Mangrove 9. These are things that they should be knowing. That's Black British history, you know?
Yeah.
And even the wars, they don't even, I asked a few of them, were there any black people in the wars? They said, we don't think so.
I was told by a teacher that I was talking nonsense. Yeah, yet still my neighbour, Mr. Hopkins, God rest his soul, he said, when I was in the war, as he said it, I was in the trench with a Jamaican.
Yep.
You know?
There we are.
And I mean, you know, he said it as it was, you know, because my mum said she remembers when people were leaving to go to the war. And Harold Moody, he fought for people to get their, you know, their citizenship, who had fought for the war, sailors and soldiers who had fought in the First World War, Second World War, you know? So I think sometimes Americanizing the history kind of takes the onus, the responsibility, or we are finding out exactly what British colonization did to us, and it was atrocious.
This is it, and it's interesting. I just did a video for a school assembly at one of our high schools in Manchester, and one of the persons that I mentioned, it was 4 black people from the past, and one of the persons I mentioned to them, which they'll really be surprised about, is that in World War I, there was a Jamaican who came over here called William Robinson Clark, who became the first black pilot.
Yeah.
The first black pilot in the RAF, you know? And they're just surprised because they didn't even think black people were over here. Then never mind. If they knew that in 1919, in Tiger Bay in Wales, there were over 3,000 black people living in Cardiff. You know, these things, they had a riot in 1919 in Liverpool. They don't know about all these things, and they need to know, because this is important. Also, they don't know, for instance, that 1.5 million black people were involved in the Second World War. Mainly in Africa, but they were still involved, you know, and these are the things they need to know.
Yeah.
I may be making myself look naive here, Linford, but I heard something yesterday that World War II, some of the battles that first started, the first battles were over Germany's attempts to control Africa's resources. So,
yes,
yeah,
World War II.
Yeah.
Not forgetting the scramble for Africa as well.
Yeah.
Well, definitely in World War I. Definitely. Because they were. You had the desert rats, didn't you? You had the desert rats who tried to take over North Africa. Yeah. But in the First World War, Germany had the whole of Tanzania and Kenya.
Yeah.
And there are around well over 1 million people were involved in fighting the British. The Germans got them to fight the British, and many died. You know, so what I'm saying,
sometimes they were put at the
these
front
are things
to actually take the brunt of everything, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were used as decoys.
I guess the point I was making is those stories never get told. It's always a European slant on why those particular things have happened, where really they were battling over the resources of the black continent, and that's what spurred them into action, because they didn't want to see the resources that country's got, that continent's got, slip into one country's hands.
That's what happened.
After you, Linford, I'll show you what we did yesterday.
No, I was just about to say that's what happened in 1884, 1885, when they had that conference. You know, the conference that decided, you know, where they decided to carve up Africa. And there was not one black person in that conference. Yep. You know, and they basically carved up Africa. They put rulers down and basically just, you know, they didn't care about the different ethnic groups or whatever. It was just, and that's why there's so many wars in Africa today.
Yeah. So what we did yesterday in the Learning Hub, we set them kind of like different tasks. So this time the theme is they learn about Ghana, but they have to learn about Africa. So and they have to do presentations and so on. So we want to talk about the partition. These children are aged between 5 and 12. So we had to do it in a way that they could possibly comprehend the whole thing. So I brought in a cake, and I then said to them, because I showed them the old picture of how Africa was, the kingdom, etc. And then brought in this cake, and said to them that this cake has always been theirs. They've always used it. They baked it every single year, and they've always known what to do with it. And they kind of looked at it. So one of them said, "Is it a real cake?" And I said, "That is why myself and Richard, who was the other teacher, are here, because we don't think you know how to properly take care of this cake. And as you're young, we don't think you've ever had that experience that we're going to teach you. And as we brought the knife in, we think that you should pay us to help you do that. We're also going to give you these napkins." So we gave them all a napkin each. So they think, yeah, we're going to eat cake. And go, but that's going to cost you your bit of your cake. So then Richard and I, and then another teacher came in. We sat there and divided up the cake. They watched us thinking, so one of them, who was 5, said, "So aren't we going to have any?" And we said, "We just told you, you're the first one who said, is it a real cake? The fact that you don't know it's a real cake shows that we have to help you." So we cut up this cake and said, "We're going to have this." So one of them said, "It's not fair. I'm going to go, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, we'll have to put you in the corner." And they were like, "Why?" They knew we were play acting, by the way, because we were laughing as we were doing it. And they said, "So you're really not going to give us any cake?" I said, "Well, there's some crumbs here we can give you." And again, they still were like, "What?" So they said, "That's our cake, and you're deciding over our cake, and you're not going to give us anything of our cake when you told us that was our cake." And we said, "Yeah." So then we showed them the map of Africa as it was, with Germany, Belgium, King Leopold, and Portugal, Spain, England, all the countries that have basically taken over Africa. And I said, "Now, how do you think the people of Africa felt when all of this partition was done, all this scramble, and they weren't invited?" And that's when one of them referred to the cake then as, "So now that you've cut up the continent," so they got it. They were no longer referring to it as a cake. They were referring to it as a continent. And it was the questions that came afterwards. They are now going to take up the challenge of looking at all of the dimensions of all the countries in the world and see what fits into Africa. So that's what they're going to do. So, I think we're going to do that next month, because they've got their homework to do for another one. But, they're going to take up that challenge, and hopefully that can be something that we can film and they can feed back to you to say what they found.
Yeah. The more I'm learning, the more I realise there's massive gaps in my knowledge. So I think Yvonne's mentioned something about the Bandung conference. I don't know if Yvonne wants to unmute, or if people want to share what their knowledge of the Bandung conference is. Is this the conference we're talking about, the same sharing of the cake?
Oh,
Yvonne?
which conference?
Bandung.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Is I've never heard the
first
term
conference
Bandung.
in Berlin, because there were two.
Yes, it was. I think that's the name of it, the Bandung Conference, where they literally met and carved up the continent and drew up their own lines and decided what parts of it they would take. And no African leaders were invited.
No, because it was seen as
it was in April 1955 to April 19. Is that the same one, right?
No, that was the second. That was the other one.
That was the second one, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah, because England at first were like, well, we'll be fair to you, because we've already got India and we've already got the other parts of the world. So
Asia and Africa, they would
so they basically had to then
at the Bandung Conference.
Imagine with our lives trying to basically say, well, we'll take that, you take that, you take that, you take that, and there's no one from those countries there.
Yeah, I mean, people can Google it. I mean, there's lots of information. There's lots of information on it.
I was about to say that particular one was the Berlin conference in 1884.
Is it the Berlin? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is it the Berlin conference?
Yes,
There were
1884,
two. There were
85.
two though.
That's the one. Yeah, that's
That's
the
the one.
Yeah.
That's the one
Yeah.
in which they carved up Africa.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
But the other one's different. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And King Leopold
Yeah.
wanted everything because
Oh, that
Yeah,
man.
but-
That man.
It's still
That
quite-
man.
Yep.
evil.
Yeah.
1882. Yes, Linford. Yes.
Yeah, and I was just saying, interestingly, it was Leopold who actually called the conference.
Yes, it
Was
was.
it really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, his
it's crazy,
backstory
isn't it?
Yeah.
And at the time, he owned the whole swathe of Africa. The Congo was huge, and he literally saw it as his private property.
Business. Yeah.
And he basically was the one who cut off the hands of all the people
Yeah,
that
God,
didn't
was
bring back
awful.
enough rubber.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, in Berlin, not in Berlin, in Belgium now, I stopped eating Belgium chocolate 5 or 6 years ago because they still have the hands chocolate, chocolate made out of hands. And I thought to myself, that is crazy. And then his monument is still there.
Still there. Yeah. And it's been proven over and over again, even what he did to children, because children had to work as well. The amount of children that died, and they had to work from the age of 4.
I think
It
the
is said
numbers,
Imagine a 4-year-old doing that.
the numbers of deaths were measured in the millions, wasn't it, in that era?
It's something between 4 and 10 million people who died. And I won't even say how many actually got maimed.
And they talk about Hitler.
Well,
And
I know.
They make Hitler look like he wasn't even trying.
And can also say that the Germans used to have where Namibia area is now, they had an island called Shark Island. And on that island in the early 1900s, before the First World War, they actually had concentration camps for blacks.
There's all these graves. I've only just learned about this stuff, with Namibia. There's all these big open graves with like thousands and thousands of Africans in. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Look how old I am. I'm
They're
just
still
learning.
very
There's
proud
so
of this
much.
German heritage. They're proud of that German heritage, where they're still wearing the costumes, and it's a case of just like in Haiti, where you had the mixed heritage people fighting against the other people because they just completely lost who they were. And there are people still celebrating that German heritage. That was oppressive. You weren't even allowed to show your hair.
Do you know, I think a lot of what we're speaking about now is still going to be covered in the after hours session, but I can see Corinne's got a hand up, and I know we'll definitely come back to all these topics. So Corinne, do you want to chip in at this point? I know we're close to
I was just going to say, you're bringing up quite a lot of stuff that, is kind of familiar. I think it's parked somewhere back in my brain, but I was just thinking that one thing is I work for a African and Caribbean mental health charity at the moment, and it's interesting that the other week someone came. He's doing some study about Black people and mental health and blah blah blah. And when he spoke to me, you know that South African twang, how South African people sound. And I was going to ask him, I was going to say, oh, you're from South Africa. But apparently he told a colleague that he's German, he's not South African. And I'm thinking, no, I know a South African, voice and that when I hear it. And I thought, do you know what? I'm not even going to talk to you. I just thought, no, I don't need it. But coming back to what we're saying about carving places up, because I was just thinking, well, actually, look at what recent history, North Africa with Libya and all those countries, and just the other day, these people, America, Britain, and God knows who else, they must have decided, I'm not sure which G7 or G12 meeting it was, that they decided what they were doing with Afghanistan over the past 20 years, that has suddenly been scuppered. They're doing it all the time. They still continue with that.
Yeah, I think we mentioned last week that it was quite rich of America, Britain, and another previous, I think it was France, to tell Russia to stay out of Africa and to stop trying to use its natural resources, because that wouldn't be the proper thing to do in this era. And I'm just thinking they've benefited from all of that, and now trying to prevent other countries from doing exactly the same thing that they've done for decades, if not centuries. The double standards are quite obvious, but we have reached the 10 o'clock period. So unless people have got questions they want to ask P and Linford before we close this first part of the session, I want to thank them both for attending. But feel free to type in the chat or just raise your hand now if you do have any last questions you want to ask them. What we'll do is...
yeah, thanks, P.